You're like, man, when I get to that place, when I'm in that position, I will never act like that. I won't make my guys work stupid hours for no reason, because that's dumb. Like, I will make a schedule so everybody can work. We get the job done. No one's going to be sitting around on my watch. And then they get there and you're like, wait a minute. You're doing the exact same thing I remember us talking about, drinking a beer out back of the barracks. Yeah. Like the exact same thing. Yeah. And I think it's the military, man. It's the cycle, but the circle of life, brother. Mm-hmm. Like, you come up and you despise the leadership until you become the leadership.
Welcome to the Military Bottom Line podcast, where we learn from veterans and those currently serving how to make the most out of a military contract. We're here to motivate, inspire, and help you leverage your service to positively impact you professionally, personally, and financially during your military career and beyond. Mike's been in just about 12 years in different capacities. And, he's always been an awesome worker. And he tells a story of how he made a couple of mistakes early on in his career. Not everybody bodes well with being stationed in Okinawa, Japan, a small island off of mainland where liberty and leisurely activities are limited. Mike got in some trouble, some 2 different Article 15s, his first contract. And he tells a story about how he was able to redeem his reputation and continue on in a military career. So I think you guys will enjoy the show and get a lot out of it. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. We've been trying for a couple tries now. So,
it's definitely, usually say 3rd time's a charm, but it's been a couple more than that, I think. So
yeah. Busy
schedules, but pleasure to have you here and a pleasure to connect and kind of hear about your career. Cause I know it's been a long one so far, and you joined a couple years before me, and I've definitely done a good job directing it where you wanted it. So would love to hear why, how you started, and kind of where it's taking you so far.
All right. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me again. You brought this to me months ago, and, I was looking forward to it then. And like you said, we've had a lot of stuff going on both of our lives to get here. So
sure.
It's good. But yeah, so, I joined 17. I was 2 weeks out of high school, graduated 2007. 2 weeks later, I was at Paris Island. Started off active duty, turned 18 in boot camp. So 2 months into boot camp, I turned 18. And
did they know it was your birthday in boot camp?
No. I kept that on the down low. Like anything that my mom, she's retired Army. My stepdad's retired Army. My dad did 8 years in the Army. Every grandfather that I've had was in the Army. I have a great grandfather actually that's still missing in action. He was shot down in the Formosa Straits in Korea.
Wow.
And they've never found his body. Last time they saw him, he was in a bamboo cage in Korea.
Wow.
So we have a lineage. So I knew the games going in. So for sure for the birthday, I was like, anything I saw that was like over the top, that was ripped up right away and thrown in the trash, Smart, my mom likes to send me stuff with batteries in it. So those right away were torn up and thrown in the trash. But yeah, so with that lineage, man, I was telling you just a minute ago, like I wanted to be in the military since I was 5 years old. And it was always the Marines. Like it was never a doubt that it was going to be anything else besides the Marines.
Just trying to one up your family or
yeah, that's 1,000%. Really? That was the whole thing. I was like, well, they're Army. I'm going to be better than them. 5 years old. I was like, these guys got to be better than these jamokes that I'm hanging out with. Yeah. So it was like, at first, it's the uniforms, the stuff, the commercials, blah, blah, blah. But then as you get older, you kind of learn the differences between them. And I've always been a huge history buff. My favorite subject going through school still is. So once you start learning that history, Belleau Woods and stuff like that, Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal and all the great battles where the Marines were basically by themselves, and they were able to defeat these unsurmountable odds and then come out victorious. And, you start learning that, you're like, oh yeah, these guys are hardcore, bro. Like I got to do this.
Yeah.
So it was always like day one when my recruiter called me. So I was in the DEP program for a year. When he called me, he said, "Hey man, are you interested in the Marines?" I said, "Yeah, actually, I've been waiting for you guys to call me. I emailed you guys like 4 months ago saying that I was interested." But I think by the time I probably emailed them, I was probably 15. So I don't think they were too interested in 15-year-olds
I was gonna
saying, "Hey, I'm joining in 3 years."
It doesn't usually, the Marines usually jump on a lead. They don't drag their feet on it. So
yeah, but so eventually they came around to it, and the early stages actually, it turned out to be a blessing for me now. At 30 years old, 12 years into my career, I wanted to go artillery. I was like, yeah, dude, I'm gonna be artillery. This is what I'm gonna do. Even though we've had all these discussions about me wanting to fly, then I was like, I don't care. He had slots for artillery, and I was like, that'd be badass to go shoot big guns. Like, heck yeah, dude, let's do that. but I was 17, so I couldn't enlist without my parents signing.
Yeah, same boat.
My mom was S2. My dad was motor T. So whenever he got out, he was at a time when the military was transitioning from a lot of analog paper to computers. Well, when he got out, he didn't get that training. So he went to go work, at an auto parts store or whatever, and no one wanted to train him on computers. So 9 years in the Army, he just didn't realize he had the tools.
Sure.
But in his mind, he didn't have the necessary know-how to transfer that into the civilian world. So he mowed yards. He started his own lawn business, and he worked for other guys mowing yards, became a bus driver and stuff like that. So he was like, no, what are you going to do when you get out? And what are you going to do with artillery? And I was like, I'm not getting out. I'm going to stay in. I'm a lifer. He's like, you're 17. Yeah. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know where we're going in life. And at the time we were enlisted, we were also a military very much at war.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of played a little factor into him. So he refused to sign the papers. So I actually had to sign an aviation contract. And he said, yeah, do something aviation wise, and I'll sign the contract. So because of him putting his foot down and not signing that, it's steered my life to where it is now. Because I have the job I have through connections that I made in the military through aviation.
Sure. I'm sure, you probably hated him for it at the time, but looking back.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I was, young and dumb and ready to shoot some big guns and run around and hump with big old packs on my back and stuff like that. And, I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'6". I was 150 in high school. So, I've had the 2 back surgeries, and I had arthritis in my knees and my hips and my shoulders. So, it kind of turned out, everything kind of worked out. Yeah. That he steered me towards a more, a career that I could really latch onto, later on in life. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And I would you, that's funny, we'll kind of cut to it a little bit, but with your intention of doing something kind of like gung ho, artillery style, would you recommend somebody go that route, or would you now give your dad's advice to somebody younger?
So, I mean, I have given my dad's advice to younger guys. Yeah. My brother-in-law actually he's a sergeant in the Army. He's selected to pick up staff. And I've been trying to convince him years to go aviation. He's a motor T. He's a diesel mechanic. We all have it. There's days he hates his job.
Sure.
We all hate our job. Yeah. It's how it is, man. When they're like, hey, we're working 16-hour days today for no reason. You're like, oh, sweet, bro. I had nothing better to do. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, since day one, I'm like, dude, aviation, bro. Aviation.
Yeah.
And, now he's like, I'm going to drop my warrant officer package. Like, okay, you got it figured out. I don't need to tell you. I don't need to try to see you. You got 7 years and you probably know what you're doing.
Sure.
But at the same token, like, dude, there's still so many regrets that I have from my early years in the Marines, like stuff that I wished I had known and pursued harder. So I was extremely good at my job, but it took a couple years. So I don't know if I've ever told you this. I have 2 Article 15s that I got.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I got busted down twice.
No kidding.
So both underage drinking.
Oh man, dude.
Yeah.
I was gonna make a video on that at some point, because that's what gets so many people, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I got once in Cherry Point, and I got it again in Okinawa. And the second time was because I got separated from a Lobo buddy, and I wrote on the sheet that I had one beer with Christmas dinner as Christmas, and they got me for having a beer with Christmas dinner.
Man, dude.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, so it was a blessing though, because that was legitimately the turning point of my career.
Yeah.
So I came in as a PFC, picked up Lance Corporal. 2 weeks later, I got busted down the first time. The second time, I was 3 days away from
busted
picking
down, up. Just so everybody knows, it's like reduced in rank. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole 9, the 45-day, cleaning party, forfeiture, half month's pay for 2 months.
Ah, man.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I was only making like $400, $500 a month anyway, so I wasn't really rolling in the dough.
Working for free.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I got over to Oki, so it would have been 5 days or 5 or 6 days, but I was within a week of picking up Lance the second time, and I got busted out of private. So 2.5 years in the Marines, I was a lower rank than I came in at. But it was kind of it lit a fire though, because I had a guy. He's actually a master sergeant now. Zach Hayden. He was my sergeant at the time, and he liked to use me as the example for. He had me get all the quals I could get. He had me become one of the most qualified guys in the shop. So he would always be like, how come Private Grooms has more qualifications than my Lance Corporals that are about to be corporals and about to be CDIs? How come this private has more And it felt good. Like, this is the one guy, because, everybody was telling me, you're trash, you're junk, you're garbage, you're worthless to the unit. And then he was like, nah, man, like, you work your butt off. Like, I'm not gonna hold you back. And it worked. 3 years later, I was a freaking sergeant, so I was still able to bust back from 2 NJPs and pick up sergeant. But
do you think that's normal? I mean, a lot of people, they get knocked down, once and then twice. It's like, dude, you ain't coming back from that.
I don't think it's normal.
What would you attribute it to?
So easy.
Just that one individual, that one leader that was looking out for you. I mean,
yeah. Like, he was a great dude, because he was a sergeant for a long time. Our Arma West C-130 engine mechanics, we were locked out for a long time. Like, you could not get promoted. So he was a sergeant for like 9 years.
Wow.
I got out in 2012. He's a master sergeant now. He was a sergeant when I got out. He just picked up master sergeant like 3 months ago. So he's like, on paper and like in life, the Marine, like, has his stuff together, never been in trouble, like, good at his job, good at shooting, good at all the Marine Corps stuff, all the MCIs, staff college. But yeah, because he was like, Grooms, like, that sucks, bro, but get over it. Like, we have stuff to do, and I can't have you, they didn't want to fat me out. They didn't want to send me to another shop. They didn't want to send me to the other part of the base. Like, no, if you're here to work, we're going to keep you around. So I was like, all right, man. Yeah, I'll work, dude. Like, if you're going to keep me here and you're going to trust me, then I'm going to keep chugging along. So I think it was for sure that one leader. But going back to your original question, yeah, like, because of stuff like that, I didn't get to re-enlist, so by the time my re-enlistment time came up, then I was aware of, like, all the sweet schools I could have gone to, like, all the other options I could have had. At the time, my re-enlistment, I was trying to lat move to UAV operator, just to get away from my career field, get away from the bad history, just basically start over again somewhere else. And so, like, jump school, they sent a whole bunch of guys right as I was deploying. So because we were on pre-deployment stuff, we couldn't go to jump school. The Army had a whole bunch of slots, and they were inviting the Marines to go.
Wow.
So, after that, I was like, man, I can't wait to go back. I'm gonna go to jump school. Like, I want to try out, the Marine Corps has all your jungle warfare schools. You get to eat the cobra blood, all that stuff. I was like, yeah, man, like, I want to try all that stuff. So in that aspect, man, I think that if I had gone artillery, I think my career would have ended differently, because I hate to say it, but I believe, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, is the ground side tends to take care of their Marines for stupid stuff like that a lot more. Like, we hear all the stories about the Marines taking the younger guys out back and handling it. Well, for my second NJP, man, I begged my sergeant major, and my division chief, Top Farrell. I said, please just take me out back, beat my ass one good time. Let's just get this over with. Like, please do not. I didn't want paperwork destroys you. It follows you. So I was like, just please, you get whatever buddies you want. You won't ever, there will be no report. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just take care of this out back.
Yeah. Serious.
Yeah, they didn't do that, turns out.
They don't really do that anymore, you know? I mean, maybe they do in some places, but few and far between. But so how has it affected? I mean, you've still been able to stay in, you know, you've got 12 years in some capacity, whether it be active or reserves. How has that affected your career moving forward and you know, being able to direct it where you want it? So
at first it was rough. So when I got out, I went and got my A&P license and I started working commercial maintenance. Probably some of the hardest work I've done was doing commercial heavy check maintenance. And within a year I was like, screw this, dude. I want to go back in the Marines. Like, I missed it. You know, I missed it so much. And if I'm going to work that hard, I'd rather do it wearing a uniform. I'd rather doing it with other Marines. I'd rather get deployed. Like, some of the best maintenance, some of the best times I had being a Marine was in Afghanistan. With the hours, with the no sleep, with the it's the mission, you know, the mission that you're working towards is, you know, that's what it's all about. But within a year I was down talking to the recruiter and I was like, hey man, I'm trying to get in. He's like, okay. Pulls up my record. He's like, oh, you got NJPs, can't help you. And I was like, okay, cool, bro. So I went and I talked to the Army, and the only thing the Army had was special operations for sergeants. So they're like, well, we're going to have to take a rank. You're going to be E4. We're going to send you back through basic training, and you're going to start the infantry pipeline starts in basic. I was like, sweet, bro. Their tattoo policy had just changed. So it was the same as the Marines. So anything below the elbow, if you could cover it, you were straight. But because it was new to them, their recruiting commander was a captain, and he was like, no, anything below the elbow, we can't take you. So, crazy. And I said, that's crazy, because any operator I've ever seen, they're full sleeves.
Yeah.
So the recruiter that was there that I was working through, full sleeves, he had just come back from a Ranger battalion. He's like, yeah, man, it's stupid. But so he's like, we'll give you a call. And they did. Like 6 months later, the Army got rid of their program, like the tattoo policy altogether. But by that time, I'd already started talking to the Navy. So I was like,
man, you were knocking on every door, huh?
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, like everybody. So it was there was no Air Force recruiter in that office.
Okay.
That was my local, where I lived in Nashville.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was like, Navy, what you got, man? Like, you know, I was still in the same shape I was. I was still 150 pounds, you know, a year and a half, 2 years later after I got out. And I was like, look, what do you guys have? And I was like, this time I'm going to do what I want to do. And I was like, what do you have? Special operations. Like, we have SWCC, special warfare combatant crafts. And I was like, yes, running gunships for the SEALs. Sign me up, dude. I'm only 23 years old. Let's do this, you know? Yeah. And I told him up front, I said, look, I got 2 NJPs, my man. Because, you know, Department of the Navy, it transfers.
Yeah.
New recruiter, he's like, don't worry about it, bro. I got you. We're not worried about it. It's not a big deal. Nice. So I was with him for 5 months. Took the pre-ASVAB, just the ASVAB tests. I was going to go, because I scored like a 71 when I first went in, but I wanted higher. You know, I was like, I was not a 17-year-old kid that was out drinking the night before I went and took my ASVAB. I'm now an adult male. I have gained some knowledge.
Have some goals.
I'm going to go, I'm going to go retake this test, and I'm going to try a little bit harder, you know? And the next day he had a slot for me to go to MEPS, and he got up with the commander, and they were like, oh yeah, we can't help you yet, 2 NJPs. So I was like, well, that's it. You know, that was 6 months of me trying. I was like, it's not going to happen. It's just not in the cards for me. So I guess I'm just going to, you know, just be content with my military career's over and just kind of focus on civilian life. So, and it wasn't until 2 years later when I got this job and I started working at an Air Force base that with the unit, and I was like, you know what? I could do the Air Force. Never crossed my mind, but I was like, yeah, man, I could do the Air Force. Let's do this.
And
so it affected me a lot until the Air Force came along. So,
which is surprising, I feel like, because typically the Air Force is pretty strict on who they let in, and they're gonna, let a Marine that, a couple NJPs, that would be unexpected.
Well, so what helped? What helped was I downplayed them slightly.
Your NJPs?
Yeah. Yeah. I downplayed them slightly. Like I said, they weren't major offenses. They were underage drinking charges. At this time, I was 25, maybe, 25, 2 kids, married, was working on a college degree. So well removed from my days of I don't give a crap. I'm just doing, I'm just partying. I'm just doing whatever.
Yeah.
My defense, I went straight to Okinawa, and I spent 4 of my 5 years in Okinawa.
Okinawa is not always good for people.
Yeah. I saw family. I saw family twice. That was once my first year, and then the second time was after my deployment. And that's the only time I ever left the island. Just, I went all over the Pacific, but that's the only time I came back. I came back home. I went to Vermont once, and I went to Florida the second time. So I didn't even see the same family in 4 years, But yeah, no. So coming in the Air Force, what helped was I was still in really good shape. I was working towards a college degree, so that really helped, showing that, hey, I'm progressing. I have a college degree in the works. Even with the NJPs, my pros and cons, like I had always high marks from everybody. I had, awards and decks, and then all my my letters of recommendation and all this other stuff. And then I had, I still stay in close contact with one of my former COs. He's a retired colonel, and he actually I think he flies for American Airlines now. But he wrote a letter of recommendation for me coming in. I had passed staff NCOs, right? One of the staff NCOs, Top Farrell, who was my division chief, who actually was the guy who, when I got my second NJP, instead of doing it in the CO's office, he said, we're going to do it in your shop. So we went down to the shop and did a school circle around the CO and the sergeant major, and they NJP'd me in front of 50 Marines that I work with all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucked.
Public shame,
Yeah, but so he actually apologized to me like a year later, because he's like, dude, I didn't know what kind of Marine you were. Like, if I could have done it differently, like I wouldn't even have pushed for that to happen to you. But I got him to write me a letter. So I had all of this working for me. And then with my civilian education, with the A&P license, so I was an asset on the aviation side.
Yeah.
And then the fact that it was the reserves. So the unit already knew me. The unit wanted me because I had been their propeller rep for 2 years. So they're like, yeah, dude, for sure. We need more mechanics, especially guys, in the Marine Corps, we're so small that we're less isolated, I reckon, like with job wise. So in the Marine Corps, power line mechanics for C-130. So you do the engine system, so the fuel, the bleed air, the electrical. You're doing the prop system. You're doing the bleed air for the aircraft. You're towing, you're taxiing, you're doing APU work. You're doing all this other stuff that in the Air Force, those are all. You have an engine and prop guy. That's what they do. You have a fuel cell guy. That's what they do. You have crew chiefs, which is what I am now, and they deal with the taxiing and the towing, and they do the general stuff like the inspections, and they write up the stuff for the other shops. But especially coming in with the prop experience, and then with all the overall system knowledge, and then the A&P stuff and everything, they were like, yeah, man, like whatever we got to do to get you in here, like, let's go ahead and get you in. So
overqualified, basically,
Yeah, and that's what helped push me to get in the Air Force, was that I had that I built myself back up from the troubles that I had. And that showed, hey, this guy isn't, a piece of trash, and he's just like, screw it. I'm just going to keep staying down here in the filth,
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's important. Like, definitely you worked to rebuild your reputation,
Yeah.
And I think, not everybody does that. I know I came across some people that, like, they messed up and they just keep messing up. They're like, well, I messed up once. They hate me now. Let me just nosedive, and they ruin any opportunity they had for recovery. And so it's unfortunate, but
it is unfortunate. Yeah, I've seen a lot of good guys. Like, we had a guy when I first got to Okinawa, he was a corporal, Well, I had found out that right before we got there, he was a sergeant he was about to pick up staff sergeant.
Dang.
And he had gotten busted down. I don't remember what he was doing, but I think he was like drunk with a handle walking around the barracks carrying a Bowie knife, just like belligerent. By the time he left Okinawa, he was a PFC.
Dang.
Yeah. Like it was just and I didn't know him as a sergeant. I knew him as a corporal, but then I was able to see the snowball effect of everything else. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, and I get it too, the what it might play on your psyche to have to go through that. But at the same time, like, yeah, man, you do. It's either you get your shit together or you just keep going down that same path and you're just like, well, screw it, man. This is just my life now.
Yeah. Well, it's always recoverable, and until it's not, and as long as you don't give up and you make the effort to rebuild your reputation, I think more often than not that you'll be okay.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it does come back on leadership too, man. Like you have to have somebody willing to like put that third chance in you and be like, okay, dude, like this is it. I'm trusting you. Like, please don't let me down, because now you're gonna affect my reputation.
Yeah.
Whenever you have a good leader, you really don't want to let them down. You're like, you know what? I can't let this guy down. I'm not gonna ruin his reputation for me, me wanting to be a dumb kid. So yeah, man, whatever you need me to do, that's what I'll do.
Awesome. And I'm sure seeing both, good and bad leadership examples has, shaped the way you lead, kind of thing. So
yeah,
I know some people, they get bad leaders and like, oh, let me just be a bad leader because I had bad leaders. And so somebody's got to break that mold.
So my wife's at the unit with me too. She's prior Army, and now she's in the Air Force Reserves as an engine mechanic. But we go down to drill together. It's 6.5 hour drive, so we get a long time to talk.
Yeah.
So the conversation coming back up to the house is always different after being down there for 2 or 3 days. Last time we were just down there last month for 3.5 weeks. And you see those leaders, like you see the ones who are there to help, and they're not just focused on. So you have the ones that are focused on, as it should be, the aircraft or the mission, and that's what should happen. That should come first. But there's a saying, airmen come first, Marines come first, whatever. You should take care of your people.
Yeah.
You don't take care of your people, they're not going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And you see it, you're young, you're early stage in your career, and you're like, man, when I get to that place, when I'm in that position, I will never act like that. I won't make my guys work stupid hours for no reason, because that's dumb. Like, I will make a schedule so everybody can work. We get the job done. No one's going to be sitting around on my watch. And then they get there and you're like, wait a minute. You're doing the exact same thing I remember us talking about, drinking a beer out back of the barracks.
Yeah.
Like the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's the military, man. It's just it's the cycle, the circle of life, brother. Like, you come up and you despise the leadership until you become the leadership. And then you just fall in the same trends that have been happening forever.
Yeah.
And then if I understand, like, if you're that one leader who's like, I'm going to do something different. And everybody around you is like, no, you're not. And then you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep doing whatever, because I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I want to make as much money as I can before I retire.
Yeah.
But then, I've seen so many guys that are just, and, females too, guys, in general term, that just want the rank, just want the money, just want the retirement, like, just want to step all over everybody on their way to get there.
Yeah.
And those, you're like, dude, that is why. Like, I can't, my moral compass wouldn't allow me to do that, and you take hits for it, but at the same time, if you're a leader that your people love, like, who gives a shit about the rest of this stuff? It'll come. Yeah. Like, I've never once had somebody over top of me hate the way I've disciplined Marines, hate the way I've talked to airmen, hate how I've led or instructed or taught anybody under me. And I've never had anybody be like, oh, you care too much about the people that work with you, so we're not going to promote you. Because if you have all your other ducks in a row and you're not just openly trying to piss people off.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference between I'm just going to go against everything you tell me and I'm just going to do whatever I want no matter what. Yeah, then they're like, yeah, dude, we're not promoting you at all.
Yeah.
But if you're, if relatively speaking, you get along with people and you're agreeable and you have good leadership qualities and you're gonna get promoted anyways. But guess what? You're not treating people underneath you like trash while you're doing it.
Sure.
And I think that is like, they can give you all the classes you want, but they say, leadership is inherent and it's a learned trait.
Yeah.
But it's picking it up over time, man. And I don't know where I get it from, but I've had the ability to pick and choose what I'm going to take and what I'm going to let go. And especially as I've gotten older, like the bad traits, like I just like, you know what? It's not worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell guys all the time, they've only ever known me as their Dowdy rep. They've only ever known me as an Air Force reserve. I said, you guys wouldn't believe this, but I used to yell a lot more. That was my favorite thing to do, was to yell and just like make people cry just because. And it wasn't, I'm going to belittle you. I was always the NCO that took people out back. And I'm going to talk to you alone and talk to you and just yell at them until they cried. And that's just the way it happens sometimes. But, it was all warranted.
That brings up my next question, because the Air Force and the Marine Corps are, very different. And I'm curious what you have to say about that transition. I mean, granted, I guess you had a pretty good cushion in between those two branches, but what's your take on the differences and I guess if somebody were saying, hey, I'm thinking about joining, should I join the Marine Corps or the Air Force? Where would you direct them with that, having experienced both?
Marine Corps, brother.
Still biased.
I got it right here. I got it right here. The Air Force flag's with it too. So
okay.
Yeah.
Not that biased. Yeah.
It's especially active duty Marines to the reserves. It's night and day. Especially now as I keep getting promoted and you see the newer generation it's insane, man. Like the outright, like just how they talk to people, and you don't know what I don't know how to put it. So a lot of the guys they work there during the week as civilians.
Mm-hmm.
And during the week, there's no rank. Like these guys all just work together. There's an E7 and an E2 working together, but during the week they're Joe, Bob, and Dick and Harry, whatever. And then on the weekends is Master Sergeant and Airman Basic.
Yeah.
But they work together all the time. So it's still Joe, Dick, Harry, whatever. They're not, it's not, hey, Master Sergeant. It's, hey, Bob, can you go ahead and hand me that wrench?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'll hand you that wrench, guy who's only been in for, 5 months.
Yeah,
I've been in for 15 years, And so you can't get on to anybody because that's the culture that they've built and that they're okay with. And the first time I addressed an E8, senior master sergeant, I called him senior. And he's like, oh, you just call me sergeant. And I was like, I don't feel right, bro. Just calling you sergeant. Like you've earned the rank of E8.
Yeah.
Like I can't. And it took me like 2-3, maybe 2.5 years to figure it out. But if you're looking, so I have a lot of buddies that are still in the Marines that are gunnies now. Like everybody I was in with that is still in are gunnies and master sergeants.
Yeah.
So they are now on the opposite ends, where we were wrench turners, we were desk sergeants, we were handling the day-to-day grind, and now they're on the paperwork side. They're on the QA chief side. They're on the shop chief side. So they are for sure at the other end of the spectrum, and they deal with the stupid, silly stuff that goes on. And I've had buddies with 13 years and be like, man, I'm done. Like I'm getting out, bro.
Wow.
Like it's gone so bad that they're just like, you know what? I can't deal with the nonsense that's coming in the Marine Corps.
Like the kids that are coming in, they just can't deal with it.
Yeah. They just can't, like, because, you're restricted so much now. It shouldn't, when you're in the civilian world, you can be fired. So there's a threat like, hey, we're going to fire you. Like you act like a dumbass. You come in tomorrow, your desk is going to be cleaned out, man. Like you're going to be gone.
Yeah.
in the military, you don't have that threat. There's no threat of like, hey, if you act like a jackass, we're going to fire you tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you might NJP me, and then I might have some more chances, or, I get a counseling session. I might get some negative pros and cons, but I'm still going to stay and I'm still going to make a paycheck. Were you going to punch me? No, you're not going to punch me, because then I'm going to, report you for assault.
Yeah.
So, but I've also worked on active duty bases with my current company. So they're still military minded, but guess what? The same stupid, silly stuff goes on in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So to me, it's always like, since day one, man, especially seeing guys like succeed in the Marine Corps, guys that I was with, like start like really succeeding and further in their career. And, I got a buddy of mine who he's a warrant officer now. Before that, he was a gunny. Before that, he was a rescue swimmer. But he did all that after being an engine guy in the Marine Corps. He saw those other opportunities and he took them. I would say that the Air Force opportunities, are leaps and bounds, just because the platforms, the career fields, the jobs they have, the money that they're allocated.
Yeah.
It's easier to be like, hey, I want to go to this school. I want to further my career this way. The Air Force, I would say, is for sure, if you get the right leadership, is more willing to allow you to pursue other avenues and to further your career than I would say the Marine Corps is. So for the pride and for the love and for just the, walking around on Air Force bases wearing a U.S. Marines, rolled up tight sleeves, and I do, when I see Marines all the time, like, it's young bucks too. I always would be like, hey, so, I was in the Marines, like, but you can't because that's weird.
Yeah.
So you just gotta, just look at them and just like, yeah, I remember those days, the good old days.
Yeah.
So for that aspect, Marines all the way. I mean, if you want to be, not to be a recruiter or anything, but you want to be part of the greatest fighter force the world's ever seen, and join the Marine Corps. But if you want to be a part of a military organization that is really looking to benefit their people outside of the Air Force, outside of the military, and that wants to see you, once again, with the right leadership, wants to see you actually succeed as an individual, and see you accomplish things outside of just your job, I'd say the Air Force all day long, because they have the resources to allow that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the Marine Corps sells you on the like no balls kind of thing, like you can't do it. Yeah. And that's kind of how they just hold you to it. Whereas the Air Force sells you on like the benefits, and it is more of a career and more of like a workplace than it is the military. And so it kind of depends, I guess, what the individual is looking for, and they're both great for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they both have their pros and cons. And it's still, I'm still very much like, I burn the IPs off my uniforms. I make sure that if I'm going in, I have a fresh shave, I have a fresh haircut every time I put on the uniform, and if I have dirty camis, I'm gonna swap them out. Like, I still like to look sharp and look presentable, and it's very different in the Air Force in a lot of places. They just kind of wing it, and they're like, hey, if nobody says anything to me, like, I'm good, as long as I don't get in trouble. Like, I've seen guys, like, you push the limits more and more to kind of see, and I've never seen so many beards in my life than I've seen in the Air Force. So
it's crazy. Yeah. So, we'll kind of wrap things up a little bit, and I'm curious, you've done a lot, 12 years in service now, right? Total?
Yep.
I mean, you knocked on every door trying to get back in. So I would venture to guess that you do not regret joining in the first place, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, if I tell people, if I could go back and do it again, I'd do it different. I would do it, obviously, without the NJPs.
Yeah.
And I'd be looking at how I've gone. So I'm an E6 now. Looking at, if I had stayed in the Marines, I'd be a gunny. With 13 years in. So 7 more years, and for sure I'd be on that way to looking at, master guns. So no, I don't regret joining. Never a day in my life have I ever regretted joining the military. I've regretted decisions I've made in the military,
Yeah.
and I've regretted how I've allowed those decisions to steer where I'm at now. Like I tell my wife all the time that if I had gone to Okinawa and I had been older and I had been married and I had had kids, you know, I was so much more. I have 3 college degrees now. I have my MP license. I work for GE. I'm a friggin' manager. I'm 30 years old.
Yeah.
Like all that's happened within the last 5 years. And I have a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So I wish I had been more grown up.
Yeah.
If not physically, age-wise, at least mentally.
Yeah.
Because I do regret a lot of the dumb stuff that I did. That really there was no need for. Like I went buck wild. I was living in a foreign country around a whole bunch of other 18, 19-year-olds. No one had any responsibilities as long as we ran good, shot good, went to work and did good. Like no one cared.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're like, do what you do, but stay within these confines. And then you would go out with, leaders and you would see them act in the same way, just they're 30, 40 and you're 19 and you're like, oh shit. Well, I mean, that guy's a major. Like he's good with, like, I can do that. And then turns out, yeah, you can't do that. Yeah. So I do not regret joining. I regret some of the decisions I've made, but yeah, I'm completely satisfied with the fact that I joined the military and at such a young age. Like,
yeah,
it allowed me to grow up quick. I just wish I had grown up a little bit quicker.
Fair enough. Give us a snapshot. Nothing. You don't have to talk about anything too dark, but like best experience contrast with worst experience kind of thing. Give us an idea of what a great day looks like and what a really crap day looks like.
Yeah. I say I'm going to put them both together. So, I was in active duty for 5 years. I did a 6-month tour in Kandahar. And the best day was we worked a 15, 16-hour day, and we had done, so while the planes were away, we had time to kind of do our own thing. So we were doing MAP training. We were doing brown belt training while we were out there.
MAP, martial arts.
Yeah. Kung Fu, Marine Corps Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Which you can't get a brown belt until you're a corporal. I was a PFC. They were giving me a waiver for it. So we got done doing some brown belt training and grappling and stuff like that. And I think that same day we had a prop change and maybe an engine change. And at the end of a 13, 14-hour day, I got a call from the CO saying that they had a plane land at another airfield, a dirt strip like 2 miles south of us in country. And, they had smoke when they landed and a high vibe on the engine and all this other stuff. So he's like, hey, I need you to go with me. And I was like, all right, man. Like, he said, what do you need? I told him this is what we need. And, we took off and we flew out there and we were able to get, it was a sensor went bad. And pilots like to over exaggerate what's going on with the airplanes. And crew chief's like, no, bro, it's a sensor, man. But, out in the middle of nowhere using little pin lights, because that's the only light we had out in the middle of the desert, and swapping this sensor out and going back. When I got back, the CO, so we had worked 13, 14-hour day, and then I got back and it was probably 17, 18-hour day that we had worked.
Yeah.
And there's no stopping time. So, I still had a 12-hour shift. As soon as I'd go back to sleep and then wake up again, I have a 12-hour shift at least. But afterwards, like, he took me to their tent and he's like, hey man, like, I know you're tired, I know you need to go home, but like, we appreciate it. That's some good work. As a PFC talking to a colonel, I was like, yeah, man, like, thanks, bro. Like, I appreciate it. And he actually put me in. I got a NAM, 2-star general came out and pinned a NAM on me for that.
Dang. Wow.
Yeah. So they called me in the tent and there. I was like, hey, we're going to give you this. And I was like, okay, thanks. Yeah. So it's cool. But the worst day too was the same kind of, in that area. Like, we did Angel Flight, and coming off, there was when the plane landed, it was like 3 a.m. So we would always meet the plane out at the ramp, so that way we could turn on the auxiliary power, not the APU. We could turn on a power cart, so that way they could turn the APU off, turn off the engines, because they would have like a hearse basically come, and they'd have an honor guard come and unload the bodies off the planes.
Yeah.
So we meet the plane out there, shut it down, so that way it could get all the power off, so it wasn't these loud engines going. Then we'd unload, whoever was coming off the casket or whatever. But this time it was a bag, so it was just like the stuff they could find of the guy, and they were unloading it and bringing it into the hearse. And whenever we got done saluting and everything else, we're about to go back to business. Another guy came off the plane, like a guy walking came off the plane, and it was a kid, man. He was like, I think I was 19, maybe. I think I was 19 when I was over there, but he was probably 18, 19 years old, a grunt. And he was just like, shell shocked, whatever, coming off the plane. And that was a rarity. Normally there wasn't a guy, every once in a while there's a guy escorting, but normally it was a higher ranking guy that was escorting one of his Marines to Bagram or whatever, to be sent back to the house. But this is a young guy, and come to find out is the dude's brother. And they were in two separate areas, and he had got word through the chain of command that his brother had been killed. And he was actually escorting the body back home, and he was going to be the one who had to tell his parents, hey, this is what happened to my brother. So like, that was by far, like, that day was like, like, oh man, this is real. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not just, let's just work our ass off. Like, that's the mission that I was talking about. Like, that's the most gratifying part of any part of being in the military, is whenever you accomplish a mission like that, and you get to see the benefits of what you're doing. And as mechanics, especially aircraft mechanics, see very little of what they do. They reap very little of the rewards. They work a lot of long hours. So if you like working long hours and being dirty all the time, do not become an engine mechanic or any aircraft mechanic, because seriously, in any branch, some of the hardest working dudes you're ever going to meet. And it's a very thankless behind the scenes job, because, you're not a pilot. You're not up there slinging stuff. You're not crew chief. You're not on the aircraft. You just get to fix it, see it take off, see it land, fix it again. And that's your whole life. You never get to enjoy flying on the airplane. You never get to enjoy doing cool stuff with it. So anytime you get to see, an aircraft take off with, pallets loaded on it, or they're going out for a night illumination, session, and they're going to drop big old flares out over a battlefield or whatever, and it comes back empty, you're like, okay, cool. We accomplished the mission. That's what I was working all day for, was to make sure they went up and they landed and everybody got home safely, and they can go to sleep while I continue to fix the airplane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of friends that were mechanics, and it's thankless is definitely a good way to describe it. So, yeah, it's fair. Well, thanks, man. That's a lot. You've covered a lot, and it's good to hear a recovery story of somebody who's made some mistakes early on, but been able to redeem their career. Because I think it is important to know that it is doable, and so
and that's the main thing, man. Like, I don't share that story. Guys that were with me know, and they know where I'm at nowadays. But there's leaders, especially today, are so scared to, I don't know if they're scared to blemish their reputation or whatever, but I would much rather somebody come to me with something, and know that I've been there, know that I've done stupid stuff. I've been in trouble. I've had to come back from it. I had to go to alcohol treatment for this stuff. The same thing. Like, I've had a lot of buddies that couldn't get their mind right, and they decided that taking their life was the better way to do it. And I've for sure had that conversation up in the room in front of 100 different airmen, be like, look, especially last year, our suicide rates were insane. Like, hey, I've been there. I've had buddies die. I've had buddies kill themselves. I've had airplanes that I've accepted and worked on, and then I've known guys and they've gone down, and those guys are dead now. Like, I've had a lot of experiences, and I know where you're coming from. So don't ever be afraid to come and talk to me. The worst thing you could do is think that you can handle something on your own, whether that's personal, professional. If you did something wrong, like, please just come tell me, so that way we can mitigate the damage at our level. You know, and I can talk to the right people and be like, look, this guy's a good guy. Like, he made a stupid mistake. Let's not destroy his whole career for this one dumbass thing that he decided to do, you know? So I think that's being able to kind of share that, like, for people to see. Hopefully people will be like, oh, you know what? There's other shit I could do besides just keep spiraling into this dark hole and just like let it consume my life. Like, that's it. I'm done, you know?
Yeah. Words of wisdom.
Thanks, man. Got a couple years on me now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, it takes everybody some time. So no, I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing your experience and your wisdom. And
yeah, thanks, man.
We'll stay in touch.
Yes, sir. Not a problem.
Thanks, brother. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Michael Grooms tell his story. I hope this benefited you guys. If any of you are in a tough situation where maybe you got in trouble, definitely don't give up. There's always ways to turn it around and redeem your reputation, as Mike did. Would really appreciate it if you have not left a review already, whether it be on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening to them. Just go over there and click on and leave a review. 5 stars would be great, but whatever your honest opinion is of the show, that's all I care about. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time.